Welcome to the Wild Physio Podcast with your host, Andrew Wild. Today, I have Dan Minnix back on. We had Dan on, I think, last July, sort of right smack bang in the middle of COVID. And Dan Minnix, he's a sports performance coach from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Huge welcome again to Dan. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's always good to talk shop with you, man. Thanks for having me.
How's everything going over there? It's obviously very different than Australia, considering Australia don't have any cases at the moment. We're flying.
Yeah, as usual, I'm very jealous of everything you guys got going on over there. Yeah, I think things are in some places kind of winding down, but also I think other places they're starting to try and ramp it back up again. So who knows? Nobody knows for sure.
Well, I can see on your Instagram and everything, you're still training people pretty regularly, so everything's going quite well on the business front. Now, there was a topic that we both wanted to discuss today, and that is why, and also go into the reasons why people stop training like athletes as they age. I sent out an email about this yesterday, actually, and it's something that we're both passionate about. Why do you think a lot of people stop training like athletes as they age?
I think first, if you were an athlete, high school, collegiate, if you're lucky enough to be in the collegiate or even professional, I think a lot of times people, it's a means to an end. They have to go to training to try and keep up with the competition, or it's team mandated, that kind of stuff. And they don't love, athletes love their sport. They don't love training in the weight room or outside of training for their sport like you and I do. We're kind of the gym rat type of thing. So I think, you do get your outliers, the people who just love training and will stay and continue to be. And those are the ones you always see that are like in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, oh, that guy could still play. Like he just kept in shape.
Yeah.
Being a genetic freak is also important, but I think it's some of that, and I think at least here in the States, it's still very much 1975, and it wants to be like, how can we look like Schwarzenegger and all those kind of guys, because they're the epitome of health and fitness. You have to look like a jacked dude. And so what do? Okay, so I do a bodybuilder program, and it's chest day. It's Monday. I always joke Monday's International Chest Day.
Yeah.
It's funny. I talked to a guy at the gym that I'm working out of right now, and he was saying, I can never get to legs. Like by the time I get to the end of the week, leg day is like the last day, and then I take the weekend off and I just start back the next week. And I was like, well, you think maybe you can just keep the same cycle, but start legs the next week and just keep the same order. He's like, oh, well, that's an interesting idea. You think legs are that important? I'm like, yeah, I do.
Of course it is, because the thing is, a lot of people, I think, once they finish, their college career in America, say for instance, or they retire from sport here in Australia, they might still continue to exercise, but they don't necessarily exercise like an athlete and like they were. So that means that they're not doing things like sprinting and running and changing direction and agility and jumping and throwing and all that sort of stuff. And I find that a lot of people start to do things that are just sort of straight down the line in a linear plane, and they never do side-to-side lateral movement, do they? And they're not doing as much explosive stuff. So, in my email yesterday, I said a lot of people, they might go to the gym, or they might go and do a couple of token pump classes and might, jump on into a spin class or something like that. And that's all well and good. And, in the gym, if you're lifting weights regularly, you're going to be building muscle mass, like if that's obviously the goal, and which is great. But at the same time, I feel like people just neglect so much more about athleticism and so much more that they could do for their bodies. And it's not necessarily because, they're injured or they're in pain or whatever. It's just that they think that that's what they should do because they're a bit older.
Right. And I was going to say, I'm glad you brought that up, like the linear thing. I think at least over here, it's got to be all or nothing. You fit into one bubble. Like, oh, you do spin, so that's all you should do is just do spin. Everything, you're tied to the bike. If you do a bodybuilding program, then you just got to do everything that's high sets and high reps, and it's all about the pump and all that. It's like, well, no, if you want to be jacked, that's cool. Like, I'm not going to downplay your goals, but like you throwing in some explosive work once in a while, like some jumps or, throwing a med ball, that's not going to hurt you. I mean, it's just something you can add in to supplement, you know, balance you out a little bit, or, go for that run every once in a while. I think where people get into trouble is that they try and chase two rabbits at the same time. So they'll try and do, I played soccer in high school, so I want to join an adult rec league and play soccer in my mid 30s, but I'm training like a bodybuilder a few nights a week and my diet's crap and I don't sleep. And then they always blow out their ACLs or tweak hammies. And it's like, well, I'm just too old. I can't keep playing or whatever. But maybe if you just cleaned your life up and your training up a little bit, you still might be able to do those things at a better level,
Agreed.
But I think it's just you get too far into the like, oh, I'm just doing one strict thing and I can't deviate off of that versus, hey, like try and balance yourself out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And like the people that are doing more of your, traditional bodybuilding programs, they could easily just tweak things up by 20, 30% within that program and make it more athletic. And you'll see the word functional get thrown around everywhere in the fitness industry, and it kind of pisses me off because everything's functional. Standing up and down out of a chair is functional.
The worst word, and also the most marketable word ever in the fitness industry, I'm convinced, is functional.
It does my head in. I think we should replace it with, athletic. Athletic is a really good word because a lot of movements that you do are allowing you to be more athletic. So, like a med ball throw, that was a good example, or a, jump squat or a broad jump or something like that, or a triple jump or something like that. That is athletic, and it's not functional. Like it really pisses me off, the whole functional word.
Yeah, like I just rolled out of bed to come over here and turn on my laptop and sit in my chair at my desk to talk to you. I think that was pretty functional also.
Yeah, exactly. Completely agree. And I said in the email yesterday, a lot of people have, bigger time constraints. They have family commitments, they have work commitments and all that sort of stuff. So obviously they've got less time on their hands as they do get a bit older. But it doesn't need to be an excuse to not train more athletically. And look, I know exactly how it feels. I remember back probably 3 years ago or so, I was lifting pretty heavy and I went through about a 9 to 12 month block where I tried to get just really big. And I remember playing tennis and going for a little bit of a kick down at the park with the footy in that time where I hadn't really done any of that stuff. And I felt sluggish. I felt like I couldn't change direction. I felt like I wasn't, as explosive as I was prior to the heavy lifting. And I didn't feel as athletic, and I just noticed such a difference. And that was also a product of the fact that I was a little bit heavier, but I had just neglected that stuff for a good part of a year. And I got to the end of that year and I thought, no, never again am I doing that, because I felt shit. I was like, I'd actually prefer to be lighter, not be as heavy, be more athletic, and not be as quote unquote jacked.
Yeah. You got too swole. Like, and that's a good point with the tennis. And I know you're a golf guy too. Like the rotation, you see, like you had to have felt like, I'm not rotating as well as I used to, especially like upper back and all that, because of the swole factor, man.
Yeah.
And again, like if that's what people want to do, that's great. But I think it gets to be that you either see some sort of issue, with chasing one or the other. Like you can't do both very, very well. Like something's gonna have to give. Now, if you want to, you can still be the jack guy and go golf, but just know that your swing is not going to be as good as it could be. So don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up when your mechanics aren't as good, or you're, like you said, you feel heavier or bigger and like slugging around out there.
Like Bryson DeChambeau is a good example at the moment. Like he's in the golfing world, he's bulked up. He's put on like 15 kilos or something ridiculous like that in the last couple of years. And he's huge. And it's definitely changed his swing. And the reason why he's doing it is he's chasing meterage. He's trying to hit the ball further, and it's working.
He's hitting like 800 yards or something.
He's hitting the ball a mile. Like he's averaging like I think 320 something yards off the tee, or 330 yards off the tee. Anyway, but he's doing it the right way to a point. Like he's trying to get big to create, obviously, more muscle mass so he can create more speed and power from there. But he's also doing the rotational athletic movements at the same time. I think
Right.
that's the important thing here is if you want to get jacked, get jacked. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But if you want to get jacked and still be athletic, you still need to train like an athlete while you're getting jacked.
Right. And I think a good example of that would be like over here, like baseball, a pitcher.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe a couple years ago. They said like the average weight of a pitcher in the major leagues was like 210 or 213 pounds. And it's been like a thing the last few years. Like they all chase velocity. They want to throw the ball harder, and mass equals gas. Like the
Yeah.
bigger and stronger you are, you're probably going to throw harder. But they still have to be able to get that rotation with the arm. And if you look at any pitcher, you're not going to say, "Oh, that guy's really jacked." He's going to look kind of slender-ish, depending on the guy. Like he doesn't look like a big meathead, but he's 6'2", 213, and can throw hard. He's athletic.
Yeah, they're more of an elastic type of athlete, and you look at a lot of basketballers. Michael Jordan was a good example. He was very elastic. He had a long Achilles tendon. He wasn't hugely muscular when he first burst onto the scene. The interesting thing about Michael Jordan, though, was when he actually started to lift weights, a lot of the weights that they did was very similar to what they did in Aussie Rules in the late 80s and 90s. There were a lot of upper body stuff, and there was a lack of lower body stuff. So a lot of them were getting much bigger up top, but not bigger down in their lower half. So you were getting a lot of, patella tendinopathies, Achilles tendinopathies, knee pain, ankle pain, that sort of stuff, based around the fact that they were getting so much bigger up top and they were heavier, and then the legs weren't getting the adequate load through them in the gym to cope with it on the sporting field.
Yeah. Plus they jump, probably 1,000 times a week, what I mean? On hardwood and crappy shoes and all that. It just like I'm thinking who was LeBron James or somebody's trainer, like athletic trainer, said that they try and like before the game they'll do all this ankle mobility work to get their ankles going, and then they get on the training table and tape up the ankles. Like basketball is notorious for that. And it's like you got to do what makes you feel right, but at the same time, like, are you just putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue there?
Yeah, and this is also about the elastic versus more of your muscular type of athlete, and you can see the difference. Sometimes you'll get that shorter, stockier, or even just a bigger guy that's just got more muscle mass versus the lean, long. High jumper is a good example. Like a high jumper is long and lean, and they've got that more elastic type of look. So it's like, well, if you're chasing these crazy big gains as an elastic athlete, is that going to make you better? It might not. And like when I say gains, I'm talking muscular gains, and vice versa. If you're a big power athlete muscularly, if you're thinking you can train more like an elastic athlete, maybe that's not going to be the best thing for you.
Yeah. Look at someone who runs like a marathon, or even just like track and field at the Olympics. The people who run the marathon or the 3,200 meter, the distance people, and then look at the 100 meter, like entirely different body type. The 100 meter, especially the men, they look pretty jacked.
Yeah.
And they're the fastest people in the world, and tend to be ones that are in, like you said, like the jumps too. Think about like Carl Lewis or those kind of guys back in the 80s that were just, like you said, long and lean but explosive. And the guys that run, or the guys or girls that run, the long distance, they're a little bit more less muscle mass. They're more of the ones you'd see on running down the street or on the spin bike.
Yeah, exactly. And genetics have massive factor to playing, how someone looks, no matter what they do with their body, whether they're chasing huge muscular gains or whatever. Because one thing about like why, this whole thing we're talking about in terms of people stopping training like an athlete, when you do age, that isn't necessarily an excuse to say I can't run or I can't sprint or I can't jump, because you can still do it. For your athletes that are in their middle age, do you get them to jump and sprint and run?
Absolutely. So I even have, like, taken it to the general pop realm, like everybody does some form of running. not everyone does true sprint work because there's a difference between running fast and sprinting, like we talked about last time.
Exactly.
Um, so we won't bore people. They can go back and listen to that one. But I have a few clients that were like ex-athletes and just still want to get after it, and we'll do true sprint work. Like we'll take 45 minutes and do a sprint workout because there's 4 minutes rest after each one and that kind of thing. So it eats up some time.
Mm.
That's not everybody, but there's obviously prerequisites to do that. If you're 30 pounds overweight, we're not going to jump in and start sprinting on day one. But I think you should be able to run a lap around the field and, as like the end part of your warm up type of thing, or maybe as like a circuit, kind of finishing up. Everybody will do some form of that. Like, the jumping as well. I mean, some people we'll do a box jump up to, 2 foot, 2.5, 3 foot box. Some people just jump up onto a couple bumpers stacked on the floor. You make it to where what they can do, but you're still being explosive. You're still learning how to sit into your hips and explode up. And, like you said before, just squat jumps. It's just normal jumping.
Mm.
It's not plyos, like, which is also a term that gets bastardized over here, like plyometrics, like in our group fitness classes. You're not doing true plyometrics. It's just jumping. But yeah, we do all that kind of stuff. A lot of crawling and, bear crawls, moving around on the ground, rolling. Some of that's part of the workout. Sometimes that's just part of the warm up. I try and get creative in ways to sneak all that stuff in there. We've even done with our youth kids, like we call it floor is lava, like just set up a bunch
Yeah.
of random things in the gym and just have them go from position to position and different pieces of equipment. And I'll leave it set up, and then like the next group coming in will be adults, and like some of them will jump on there and start doing it as like a part of their warm up or at the end of their workout, and like they like it. Who doesn't want to play and have fun?
Yeah.
It kind of brings them back to something they haven't done in 40 years. Just getting those different movement patterns and things you might not have had in the last, like I said, few decades. It just strictly weights and single joint exercises and
Mm.
that kind of thing. And it's like, just let's express ourselves through movement as as
Bring
variable as we can make it.
bring out the inner child in people.
Yeah, and you see it. I mean, I've seen it with, I don't know if I can do that. I haven't done that in a long time. And then they try it, and then they're doing it naturally, and they're like smiling and having fun with it. And I found that with even just having people hang from a bar, just
Yeah.
hang for like, take 5 deep breaths. We're not doing any chin ups. We're not doing anything crazy. But just hang for 1 breath or 5 breaths. And you notice like their mood is better because they're like, it's outside their comfort zone a little bit, but they're still feeling safe because they know I'm not going to put them in that situation.
Mm.
But just, yeah, like you said, like, well, I'm a certain age, I can't do this anymore. I think that I honestly, like, when I hear that, like, especially if someone's like under, say, 60 years old, like, well, I can't lift heavy anymore because of my knees, or I couldn't jump up on that box. Maybe in my younger days I could do that. Like that really just makes me want to like prove them wrong even more. Like, no, you can still do this. We'll modify it to meet you where you're at, and then we'll make it a goal to try and improve it, of course. But I think like when people tell me that stuff, it's just like I make a subtle note in my head of like, I'm gonna change your mind very soon. Like it's like a personal vendetta for me that it's really what I aim to do, and like it's what my business is all about. It's you know you never thought you could do that before. Well, I'm going to show you that you can, and like that's what gets me going every day. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you can easily, or you can regress an exercise to make it a little bit more simple.
Yeah,
And then from there, you can obviously progress that exercise to make it a little bit more challenging as you go forward. But yeah, I agree, mate. Like anyone at any age can do more athletic movement. There is no problem with that. And, athletic movements are, falling and crawling and, jumping, running. We've talked about them. They're very primal movements.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I completely agree. I think it's a good thing that you make it fun and you make it, bring out the inner child in those adults. Because as a physio, I see it a lot. People come in and they've just, they're recent parents. And as the kids have gotten a little bit older and the kids start to run around and all this sort of thing, I often see clients come in and they say the same thing. I just want to be able to play with my kids and run around and kick the soccer ball or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they're struggling to do that. And a lot of that is down to the fact that, they're a little bit unfit. They haven't
Yeah.
been doing those type of athletic movements for a very long time. They might be a little bit overweight, something like that. So if you slowly integrate a little bit more of the athletic movements back into their training, well, they do typically get much, much better, and they're able to do the things they love, which is effectively just playing with their kids.
Yeah.
Because that's
yeah.
what kids are doing. Like, kids are just doing athletic shit all the time.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's just opening up their, their vision of seeing like what they can actually do. Like, I think because we're not like over here, we're not really shown a lot of that in school and that kind of thing. So it's, oh, I'm just going to go in and do some whatever I saw on YouTube or like in, Women's Health magazine. They tell me I need to do these, girl exercises. And it's like, no, you can actually throw medicine balls up in the air and do this and throw it against the wall, let out some aggression. Like I've had a few people that come in after a stressful day at work or a week, and they're like, "This is one of those days, Dan." I'm like, I know what they mean, so I'll get the med ball out, and they'll just slam the med ball off the ground for 10 reps. Like, it's fun. Like, yeah, maybe a little simplistic, but like they like it, and it's getting their heart rate up, and they look forward to it. And
And
like,
it's not super taxing either. Something so simple like that. Like, it's the risk versus reward there. There's heaps of reward with very little risk.
Bingo. And like, who can't? I mean, you've worked with a lot of people and more of, people on the injury side too than I have, but like, who can't really throw a medicine ball? And think about all the zillion ways you can throw a medicine ball. Like, even if you have a bum knee or a bum shoulder, or, I mean, you could still find a way to throw a medicine ball to develop some power training. You know what I mean? So it's just about, just like we said before, modifying it to what they can do, and just tell them, just throw the ball as hard as you can, and like obviously break down the mechanics first, like use your hips more and that kind of thing. But once that's all done, just chuck that thing and like let it out, And I like agree with what you said, like that you tend to see that the results do get better because, like all the research says, like you're training explosively, that's going to carry over to strength, that's going to carry over to the muscle mass and bone density and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to feel better. And you're gonna, and I always tell people too, like, look at the most, if true aesthetics is your goal, like you just want to look hot, whether you're a guy or a girl, you don't care about any other thing, you just want to look good. Look at some of the most athletic people in the world, like pick a sport, pick, Olympics, anything. I think they look pretty good, guy or girl. I mean, versus like the big, huge bodybuilder on stage, or someone who's, a basketball player or NFL player, or, I mean, the athletic build is a nice, sexy look, in my opinion,
Oh, for sure.
So it's like, let's train like an athlete and try and get you that look. You know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed. And people also need to understand that the sport often chooses the athlete and chooses the person, as in the genetics of that person has dictated how good they are often at that sport. Obviously, they've got to put in the time and effort, but a sprinter's not going to be like, if they're a 100-meter sprinter, they're not going to be a very good long distance runner purely because of the genetic physiology. Like, if you look at West Africans versus East Africans, an Ethiopian that's really good at the marathon is not going to be lining up in the 100. So genetics play a huge part. One other thing we want to dive into are ladders. I'll let you cover that, the fact that we both aren't a fan of ladders, and why.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing it up because I made, under my business page, we made a meme, and I tagged that, I forget the page, a strength coach with a board or something, I think it's called. They reposted it, and you saw it, and I was like, this would be a cool thing to talk about. And to me, it's just been ad nauseum, but like, it's crazy that this is still even a discussion and happening in the world. Like, obviously, like any strength coach or performance coach that's worth their salt will, like, has criticized it in the past. But just seeing it with athletes, and like, why are you using a ladder while we're improving speed. Well, no, you're not. I think
Because
the
it's
three,
actually really slow.
yeah, there's three, um, I tend to find three like main arguments that people want to use those. The first one is, oh, we're working on speed or trying to get faster. Um, well, it's not, because like you just said it. I mean, we talked about it in the last talk we had. Sprinting is around 5 times ground reactional forces, 7 times musculoskeletal forces on one leg at a time. There's nothing in the world you can do to replicate that except sprint. So you tap dancing through a ladder isn't going to do that. Well, we're hitting the ground really hard. We're punching the ground really hard with our feet. It's still not the same. And, the biomechanics don't match up. That looks nothing like, get a video of a kid doing a ladder and get a video of Usain Bolt going down the track. They don't look the same. You don't need 30 years in the industry coaching eye to see the difference. So therefore, like from, like dynamic correspondence, like it's not matching up. Um, even I would say, like, look at the fastest people in the world, like we talked about before, like, the 100 meters in the Olympics. Those are the fastest people in the world. Looking at the guy in the NFL who's really fast and he's doing it in his off-season program because it looks cool or because his off-season coach is an idiot. That doesn't mean you should do it. Like,
Yeah.
don't look at him. Look at the fastest people in the world. They're not doing it.
Agreed. It's like as what's his name, LeBron James doing I think he was. I got tagged in this a million times. He was kneeling on a Swiss. I think he was kneeling on a Swiss ball doing a shoulder press or something. Yeah.
And he had it was a bell up,
yeah, that's right.
And then he had a kettlebell on top.
Yeah, like it was just the most fucking stupid thing, and people were tagging me in it, and I'm like, that in itself is the stupidest thing you could ever do. Yeah, he's a great athlete and he makes it look easy, but no human on earth needs to be doing stuff like that.
I always tell people about that too, and it's like, how would you like to be the guy who told him to do that, and say he rolls off and breaks his wrist or something?
Yeah,
you have to call the LA Lakers and say, hey, guess what I did? And like that would be a tough phone call.
Seriously.
But play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Exactly.
The second thing that people tend to make for, we're working on agility, and it's like, I think you got to define what agility versus change of direction, and there's a difference. Agility is more reactive. It's not predetermined. So if you're in a game situation and you're going one-on-one with a guy and he goes left or the play goes left, you have to react to that. You don't know which way he's going to go. But if you set up a bunch of cones and say, here's the pattern we're going to go, that's more change of direction. It's predetermined. I think both have their place, but agility, I think, has way more carryover because it's more reactionary, which is what most gameplay is. LeBron's not telling you which way he's going to go down the court. You got to try and figure him out.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's a really important point. A lot of physios and strength coaches and personal trainers don't understand that change of direction and agility are very different.
Yeah, and I would argue with the change of direction part, even, because change of direction, you still want to take as minimal steps as possible to be more efficient. And you see all these with the ladder. I mean, how many steps it takes to get through the whole ladder. And then, even with cone drills, you see it a lot with football. They'll take 30 steps to circle around a cone. And it's like, you're telling me that's efficient? I don't know. Like, it looks fast because you're moving your feet fast, but you're also staying in about a 2-foot radius. You're not going anywhere. You're just kind of wasting your energy. And I think the last one, and what people say, it's just a useful tool. It's good for warming up. It's good for, I use it with my adults. Like, that's a different argument. Like if you want to do push-ups, one hand in the ladder, the other one, and like work laterally and do a push-up and then move like a sideways crawl to the next square, like that's cool. Like it gets people moving, whatever. But, when people, I'm talking more from this, it's improving speed, it's improving agility. Obviously you can use that thing for a zillion different things. A buddy of mine who's a coach in the collegiate setting here, small D3 school, we were talking last summer about how's he training his athletes with the quarantine and gyms being shut down and these college kids are at home with no equipment and how do you get a kid ready? And he said, well, the one kid was a lineman and he had a foot ladder. He's like, I was going to have him set up the ladder to kind of have him get used to where his footwork should be, like put it in this square and then you want to step here. And I was like, okay, like you're getting creative with it, but doing the typical drills you see, it doesn't translate anything.
No, it doesn't
Sure,
translate at
you
all.
can get creative with a bunch of different things. You can use a pencil and get creative and do a bunch of different things you can do with a pencil, but it's meant to write with at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of this stuff gets glorified on social media, like the Foot Doctor, I think it is on social media. It does all this stuff with, ladders and like pumping the feet really, really quickly around cones and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, well, it doesn't really correlate and transition across to sport.
He's moving fast and he's working hard. So
it looks cool. It looks cool. And it looks like he's a real speedy dude, but it's like, it's not really transitioning across into sport at all. So I'm glad you said all that, and I'm glad you clarified the change of direction versus agility, because that's really important. I'm with you with ladders. I think they're a waste of time. I think if you wanted to add a ladder in there for, say, if you're doing a class with a 45-year-old bunch of people and you want them to do maybe a couple of little jumps through the ladder or something like that for a bit of fun, we'll go for it. But you aren't doing true agility. You aren't performing change of direction really. You're just like hopping your feet in and out and doing these twinkle toe stuff, and you're not doing it under any speed whatsoever. It's slow if you look at it.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, if it's for a group fitness class that's adult population over 40 and they just want to move a little bit and try and move quick and move their quick feet, like absolutely, that's cool. But I think it's such an easy thing to do too. Like it's you spend $40 or $50 and get a ladder and some cones, and you just throw that out there, and all of a sudden you're looked at like, well, this guy's got a ladder, okay, and all the things you can do with it. It makes you feel like you're being athletic, like we talked about at the beginning. It feels like you are, and to the untrained eye, it looks like they are. So I want to train with that guy. And again, if you're adult over 40, that's great. But if you're an athlete, if you're a 15-year-old kid, what are you doing? Like it's not doing what there's I haven't seen one good argument that says, oh, this is really good for speed work,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're a waste of time. And I'll often, if I'm ever doing change of direction stuff, I'll use cones sometimes and I'll put them out randomly, like two cones won't match up or something. And one of my clients will say, oh, that's not even. I'm like, well, that's the point.
Sport game isn't perfect.
Yeah, exactly. The game is never perfect. And, they're stressing about one cone being further away from the other cone on the corresponding side or something. And you're like, well, sport's random. So I transition my clients to quote unquote agility work as soon as possible once they're through that change of direction phase. So a good example there would be post-op ACL. You would start with change of direction first. Yep. You would not do agility first. So you would start with that and then transition slowly into the agility as they progress and as they are competent at change of direction first. That is a good example.
I was just going to say that, like, it'd be really good in your setting with the change of direction, because it's about gaining that confidence again and building up the tendons and all the ligaments. And like, basically it's just, they can do it. And as with coming out of an injury, like it's all in your head at that point. It's just building that confidence back up to like go into a cut and do it. And it's, you can take that many steps, you can go slow with it, plant your foot the right way, push out of it. And then, over time, once you get that confidence, then it's, back to the reactionary, more real, true to game, true to sport stuff.
No, absolutely. I agree. The it's a good, transitional period from, straight line running into change of direction. And then finally you're hitting the agility stuff at the end of the rehab plan before they're sort of transitioning back into training pre-game. So it has its place, but burn the ladders, I think, much like the BOSUs, burn them. We all know your stance with the BOSUs. Yeah, there's a couple. Every once in a while I'll see one. I like sending it to you because I know it gets you going. I agree. The BOSUs are just, that's a whole other thing. They
But
take they take up too much space as well, and they're just ridiculous. Unstable
yeah,
training's done
yeah,
pretty dumb.
yeah. And I think too, with the going back to the agility real quick, like with even like adults, we've done it not true agility, but more change of direction, like set up two cones, maybe 5 yards or so apart, and just side shuffle between them, and
Mm,
then face the coach, and just like throwing a ball back and forth. Like at first, you find out who's pretty with it and can do it, but even if they struggle with it, they start to pick it up, and it's you go for maybe 20, 25 seconds or so. I mean, their heart rate's pretty high after that.
yeah,
So you're getting the heart rate up and down, which is obviously burning the fat and all that. But it's the coordination. It's with the brain, and talk about bigger discussion of like vestibular systems and all that kind of stuff. It's challenging them that way too, that they might have never had if they never played sport or anything like that. But it's fun. It gets out of the weight room. It's the monotony of always, most clients aren't like I said at the beginning, much like the ex-athletes, they're not in love with the gym like we are. They're there as a means to an end also. So if you can make it fun in a way and challenge them in different ways, as opposed to like, oh, am I going to deadlift or am I going to squat today? Yay, it's really fun.
yeah.
Versus like, oh, like that was kind of fun. It was challenging. I got myself moving. I felt kind of athletic, and I think they're going to get way more out of that. When you, as you know, when you're a little bit more excited and a little bit more mentally invested and pumped up for training, you're going to get more out of that session than if you're just not really psyched about it.
Yeah, for sure. And you can make the agility stuff really, really simple. And a really simple one that I often use is just set up a sort of a square or rectangle field. Doesn't need to be very big at all. You could go 5x5, put two people in there and just play chases.
Yeah, tag.
Tag. Yeah, exactly. Something so simple like that is super effective. So yeah, you don't have to make it over complicated at all.
No. There's two kids I trained. They're 14 and under, and brother and sister. I'll take one of those, those styrofoam pool noodles.
Oh yeah.
I'll give them one of them to the one kid, and I'll say, all right, hit your brother with it, and they'll chase each other all over the field. And I mean, I'll send you the video. That's as agility and change of direction and speed as it gets.
Yeah, exactly.
He's trying to get away from her. He's doing this. He's trying to juke her out, and then he takes off, and like they're having fun. They're trying to hit each other with it, but they're also doing all of the skills I want them to do, versus trying to get a 12-year-old to, okay, when you run this way, I'm going to have you do this, or he's going to be like, this is boring because he's telling me what to do.
That's a good one. I like that. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah. There's
I like the pool. The pool noodle's a great option.
And it's cheap. It's like $1.
Yeah.
It's not a $40 agility ladder.
And you're not going to be able to break a nose with a pool noodle,
right.
Probably.
Unless I mean they try, believe me, but there's no no risk of injury really. So, I mean, I didn't come up with that. I got that from somebody, but it's just like making it fun and creative no matter what age it is. I don't like we said before. It's just I hate the I'm above a certain age, or I can't do this thing anymore, or those days are behind me. It's like, I mean, maybe they are. Like maybe if you're 55 and you have 30 pounds to lose, maybe sprinting really isn't your thing.
But maybe one day it will be.
Maybe one day it could, but even if not, there's still other things you can do. You don't have to just totally go the opposite route and mail it in and do spin class. You can still do some things. Maybe we can run fast. We don't have to sprint, but we can run fast.
It's all relative.
Relative, yeah.
No, I agree, mate. And I think the summary is continue to train like athletes as you age. You can do a lot of cool stuff for the rest of your life if you maintain it. And even if you haven't maintained it and you're starting an exercise journey, there's nothing stopping you going forward to get to the point where you can run, jump, all that sort of stuff. But you need to be consistent with it.
Right. And I think like we probably talked about that last year with summertime and, the lack of access to gyms and equipment. I was outside and I had a bunch of other people. We were outside doing, sprint work or jumps, because like strength lasts a good month or so, if not more, but your explosive power stuff, that tends to diminish faster, So keeping that up will help keep the strength up. You know what I mean? So when in doubt, I would say when in doubt, sprint. But if you can't, just be as explosive as long as you can.
Yeah,
You can do that a zillion different ways.
yeah, amen to that. And thanks for clarifying the ladder situation. I'm glad you're with me. The burn is the option rather than use.
Right. Burn them all, man. Burn them
Burn
all.
them all. Love it. Love it. Now, Dan, thanks so much for coming on. Time really does fly. I think we've been going for 40 minutes. Where can all the listeners find you? Instagram, website, all that sort of stuff.
Instagram is just my name, Dan Minix. I haven't been too active on posting on there, but I'm still on there lurking. I use that as most of my, communication and seeing what other people are doing. My business is on Instagram and Facebook, Train at API, and then we're at train@api.com. Check us out, and I appreciate you having me on again, man. It's always great talking to you. And every time I see you, the hair just looks better and better too, man. I'm so jealous. I'm losing mine, and then like yours gets longer every time I see you.
No, it was actually much longer than this. End of last year, I hadn't had a haircut in a very long time. It's actually looking quite short at the moment. It needs a trim. I think I'm going to go back to short.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's easier to maintain that way.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to chat to like-minded individuals, and it sounds like everything's going really well with the business. This podcast is live on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Any final thoughts, Dan?
No, just like I said, keep training explosively as long as you can. Even if it's not your thing, and you just want to get jacked and swole, you could still throw in some jumps in there, or this is something. Run up every time you see a flight of steps you're going up. Run up them really fast. I mean, something. You can always find a way to do it in the course of your day. Doesn't make you any less of a man or a woman to do it. So it's not going to kill your gains. It's actually going to help you.
Yeah, for sure. And there's always a way to regress an exercise or a movement, and then you can slowly progress it up in time. So you just got to.
If you're not sure, ask for help.
Exactly.
That's what we're here for.
Be consistent, stick to the process, and you will see the results you want to see if you do the right things. So keep on trucking along. You can find me at Wild Physio Fitness on Instagram, Facebook, all that sort of stuff. And my website is wildphysiofitness.com.au. Thanks again, Dan. Let's do it again soon. Always a pleasure. Have a good Tuesday.
Hey, good night to you. And anytime you want to chat, just let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good. As usual, guys, stay strong.